Hello, it's Douglas Long and Sunny Navratnam once again. So today we were going to talk a little bit about power and authority. Douglas, some thoughts from you.
Okay, I was looking at some blog material that came through this morning from a colleague in the United States. And one of the points he was making was that we tend to use military examples for civilian leadership. That time and again we hear images of war and battle and in combat type situations used in business, and everyone's aware of the work of Sun Tzu and other people like this and Clausewitz, and that we tend to pick up their models and concepts from a military point of view and use them in the ordinary business arena. And he was making the point that having been a senior military officer for many years, he's now out in Civvy Street, and that what he's finding in the civilian arena, in the business world, is that things are far more autocratic, far more dictatorial in many cases than ever was the case in the military. And it raises this whole question about power, and to me anyway, it raises the whole question about power and authority, and how do we actually get people to do what we want them to do when we don't have a rigid military hierarchy in which you've got to do it because other people have got more up on their shoulders or on their arms saying that I am senior to you. And this, of course, is very much back to the first generation and the second generation leadership concepts. In the first generation leadership concept, it is all about power and authority. It is all about, I want you to do this and you are going to do it, or I will use whatever power I need to enforce that. Second generation leadership is predicated on exactly the same concept, but it expresses it a little more nicely insofar as it says, I want you to do this, and if you do it, then there will be certain rewards such as my attention or more information or promotion, whatever it might be, in order to get there. And this is still the way in which primarily we run our organisations. The problem is that many people today, an increasing number of people today, I think, are finding this repugnant, rebelling against it, I knew you'd get the word, rebelling against it and saying, I'm not prepared to accept power and authority in this most blatant format. I'm not prepared to say, to jump just because you say jump. I want to know why. I want to know what's important, and I want to feel that it's important. And this is the shift that third generation leadership really addresses. Because what third generation leadership is about is saying, I want to work with you. I want to make sure that you really understand what it is that we are trying to achieve, that there is a commonality of purpose between the organisation, between me as the manager or leader, and between you as the follower, the rest of the people that are involved, that there is an absolute commonality of purpose and agreement on where we're going and what we're really trying to do. Because when there is that shared commonality of purpose, and when people feel committed to that commonality of purpose, then true accountability takes place, because a person starts to feel fully accountable, first of all to themselves. They don't want to let themselves down. Second, they don't want to let the rest of the team, the people around them, down. So they're accountable to them. And of course, ultimately through both of those, they become fully accountable to the organisation. And it's when this really happens that organisations start to achieve tremendous results, previously unexpected results, the sorts of things that we've talked about in other places, including on the workshop that's coming up in a few weeks' time, when we're talking about the phenomenal results achieved by an organisation that was trying out third generation leadership for a short period.
It's actually quite interesting to see. My experience is similar in terms walking into organizations that had these authoritarian models and watching how when we introduce third generation leadership principles into these organizations, that even the leaders themselves transform.
Yep.
And you know, I wonder what it would be like for many authoritarian people to actually come and be in a third generation operation or a third generation culture and embrace it, to see how it feels like inside. I had the wonderful experience of a trade union gentleman who was one of those really rough and tough. He'd come from England and he was just absolutely, it's about boom, boom, everything that he was doing. And he got involved with us on an operation that we were doing in a state organization, and he looked at what the leadership style that we were doing was, and how people were doing things that he never expected them to do. These guys were doing amazing stuff. And he kind of got himself engaged in this process himself, wanted to learn, and we kind of mentored him as he did some of the stuff around him. And he one day, the great tribute was to one day have him walk in to the office, and he had this two beautiful leather briefcases that he gave me and this other gentleman, the two of us who had mentored him through this process, and he was really crying. He said, I can't understand how I spent 50 years of my life being the way I used to be, and going home so upset and angry and stressed. And here I am, sitting with you guys who taught us a few things, and it just became so, I just felt that it was right, and then I did it, and here I'm going home, and I'm smiling. I said, it doesn't make sense to me, and I really got that, this gentleman sitting there with tears in his eyes, and appreciating the gift that he had got, and the gift that he turned out to be to the staff and the people that he was dealing with. So I do echo it, and I am quite cognizant of the fact that there's so many organizations where they think the only way that they can get something done is by being these authoritarian, dictatorial beings. And I always look at their faces and ask the question, those eyes don't look like they're enjoying what they're doing. So in the sense that power and authority that is vested in someone through that process of domination and control also seems to have a reverberating effect back on them, where they're interested, they are upset, and they are angry. Whereas the third generation leadership model, because there's engagement with everyone else, the kind of reversal or the effect on the individual, the leader himself or herself, seems to be a lot different, much more pleasant and joyful and engaging for themselves in what they do.
Yes.
I really see what you say, and I think it's something that most organizations need to look at. Young people of today are definitely not in the same mold, and the average person today is also not willing to be pushed around and dictated to. That's perhaps accounting for why so many people are leaving the workforces and starting their own small businesses and getting out of the place, because they just hate being in these organizations.
Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think that would work in your organization, or are you a leader who practices those principles? We would love to hear from you. Please comment or email us. We would love to hear what your thoughts are and what your experiences are. Thank you for watching. We look forward to talking to you soon.